Good morning, church. So good to see you and worship together. And as Joe said, just hear from God that invitation to come and bow ourselves before Him and receive from Him. And I trust that as we open the Word together now, we're going to kind of continue in that posture of submission, but also our hearts being open to receive from Him. If you don't know me, my name is Simon. I'm one of the pastors here, and one thing we love to do whenever we worship together is also open up the Bible and have some time for God to speak to us through it. And usually we do that through going through series of messages through books of the Bible. And so next week, for instance, we're going to be re-beginning a new series in Judges, looking at the life of Gideon that we're really excited for. But this week, as we're kind of still in the New Year season, we're going to just take a one-off Sunday just to open up a story in the Bible to really let God prepare us for what He is going to lead us into this year. We've already heard from a number of us this morning that there are big things coming in our individual lives. Maybe for you it is a change. Or maybe for you it's a new beginning. Or maybe something's coming to a conclusion this year for you. Or maybe it's actually not something you know is coming, but it's uncertainty. Maybe for you 2025 there's some health challenges or relational challenges or just general uncertainty that you are kind of bracing for at the beginning of this year. At the beginning of years and kind of seasons, we find ourselves, don't we, looking ahead because it's helpful to kind of prepare ourselves for that. And in the same way, when we kind of come together as church this morning, it's helpful for us to kind of have that same sort of long-term vision to ask, how do we need to prepare ourselves for where God is leading us? As a church, we have a kind of a number of plans unfolding for us this year. And there's two this morning that I'd like to just particularly highlight before we jump into the Word. And the first has already been mentioned. Joe said it right at the beginning, and that's that we have the members of the Brook Church Bagshot here with us. Shall we just welcome them again? Just to catch you up in that story, if you are new with us this morning, we as a church are part of a family of churches called Commission, and the Brook Church Bagshot are also part of that family. And so a number of years ago, in our kind of family connection, we began supporting the Brook Church by sending over worship leaders and preachers just to resource their Sundays. And last year, or 2023 actually, 2 years ago, that kind of relationship formalized a bit when their pastor stepped down and they invited us as elders to oversee them for a 3-year period. And really our shared heart for that partnership is that the Brook Church will be kind of revitalized into a local self-sustaining church serving Bagshot and the wider area there. And we're kind of really excited for how that is going to go. And that is part of the story that many of us, I guess, will be familiar with. But there is another few chapters that might be news to some of us, which is that there's a couple in our church who, as we've gone through that process, have felt particularly called to the Brook Church and feel God leading them to kind of serve there. And that's Tom and Rachel. They're actually very conveniently leading worship for us this morning. And so our intention as we've kind of processed that is at some point within the next 2 years to send Tom and Rachel with a group gathered from ALC to kind of partner with the Brook Church and be part of that renewal work there to serve the church there. And just to really prepare for that, we felt as elders that it would be good to have a season of both creating space for vision for that renewal to develop, but also for us in the Brook Church to just get to know each other a little bit more closely. And so end of last year, we invited the Brook Church to come and join with us on Sundays. And that means that for this term, at least, we'll kind of review as we go through the year, but for this term, the Brook Church are wonderfully going to be joining us every other week on Sundays And I just want to encourage us. Was that a whoop or just a noise? Yeah, a whoop. And I just want to encourage us as we kind of move through this year, whenever we see the Brook Church with us, friends, let's welcome them. Let's get to know them, because this is a step we're taking so that we can come closer together, so that we can do mission together. And we're really excited for how that's going to unfold. There's also another kind of thing going on for us this year, which I can probably deal with a bit more briefly, which is that we're going to be renovating our building, the Life Centre. So again, just to catch you up, if you aren't part of our church, in October last year, we felt it was right to have a couple of gift days to raise funds to renovate our building in North Ascot and turn it from a Sunday meeting space, which it is currently and is too small for us, which is why we're here, and to turn it into what we're calling a hub for mission, where kind of our community work and missional work can go out from. And amazingly, on those gift days, through a combination of gifts and pledges and gift aid on top of that, we were able to kind of raise the funds that we need for that. And so, God willing, by the middle of this year, we will have a renovated building, which is very exciting. And we're all excited to see how it looks. But the thing I'm really excited about is seeing what happens in the second half of the year and seeing what we can do with that building. Seeing how we can kind of grow our community lunches, which serve our community. How we can grow our Sunbeams toddler group. And even more, how we can begin new things. Particularly thinking about an Alpha course where we can invite friends to come and explore the claims of Jesus. And so both at kind of the wider church level, and I'm sure at the individual level for many of us, there is a sense that 2025 is going to be a significant year of kind of activity. There are plans and projects and things coming up that we see we need to prepare for. And it's really with that in mind that I feel quite led this morning to speak to us about something which is going to be really key for us to get right at the beginning of this year, and that is our posture. I want to speak to us about posture this morning. It's interesting to me even already that we've kind of had some words speaking to us about posture, about bowing down, sitting at Jesus' feet. So I feel that before we kind of jump into any plans, jump into any projects, jump into our to-do lists and the things we need to get done, God wants to call us to just kind of get our posture right at the beginning of this year. And as I've been thinking about this, I thought it would be helpful just to share my experience of the power of good posture, really. And so if you don't mind, I'm just going to tell you a bit of a story today. Is that okay? So a couple of years ago, a wonderful lady in our church named Jackie Hewson, who is in the room today, came up to me and she said, "Simon, I really can't stand listening to your preaching." And I obviously get that whenever I preach, so it wasn't a surprise. It was a bit of a surprise from Jackie because she's such a lovely woman. But of course, she explained to me, she said, "Simon, I'm a physio. And so whenever you're preaching, all I can see is your horrendous posture." And I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but I'll try and demonstrate for you. I've basically got these knees that go back really far. And that means my hips kind of jut forward, and then my back goes like this, and then I kind of hunch over to compensate. And so I'm just kind of preaching like this, and Jackie's like, "I can't hear a thing." And so what Jackie did was she said, "Actually, I'm having a training group with my physios to correct this exact problem. Would you come and be my kind of model?" And I was like, "Free physio, sounds fantastic." And so I kind of went into the studio, and I tell you, it was quite an experience in itself, just having 12 physios look at my body and basically have the reaction you had, just like, "What? This is horrendous." Prodding and poking me. But I was glad I went, because in the process of that, Jackie corrected my posture. And I tell you, as soon as she did it, and I was kind of standing in it for a bit, I could feel the benefits of it. I was like, wow, this is what it's like to be a normal human being. This is quite good. But it was when I put my body to work that I really experienced the power of this. Because basically a couple sessions after one of the sessions, I went for a run, and I don't say this to boast, but I felt like I was flying. Like the past few months of running for me had just been a slog. I had started not enjoying it. It was horrible. But then I kind of went out, and it was like I had my old body back. And I hadn't been training particularly well. I wasn't running much at the time. It wasn't like I got new shoes or anything. It was just all down to this posture. This new posture enabled me to run well. And I think there's an important lesson there for us. Because getting that new posture, it didn't enable me to run. I was already running. I was already doing, 3 miles, 5 miles when I would go out. But what that new posture did enable me to do was enable me to run, firstly, in a way that was healthy. It wasn't doing damage to my body. It was in a way that was sustainable, but also it helped me run in a way that was really enjoyable. And in the same way, I believe that if we get our kind of posture right at the beginning of this year, it's not going to change necessarily how our year looks. The same highs and lows, we're still going to go through all of those. But having the right posture will enable us to move through this year in a way in which our hearts are healthy, spiritually thriving, not burnt out. In a way in which we're kind of living sustainable lives, and a way in which we're actually kind of experiencing the lightness and freedom that God wants for us. That's what I believe getting the right spiritual posture can do for us this morning. And it's at this point you're probably thinking, okay, Simon, you're saying the word posture a lot, but I'm not quite sure what you're meaning. Well, what I want to do now is we're going to kind of turn to the Bible now. We're going to look at a short story from the Gospel of Luke. Luke chapter 10, if you want to turn your Bibles there. And we could go anywhere in the Bible, but I've chosen this one because I just think it just demonstrates so well the posture that God invites us to as his disciples. So with that in mind, the words are just going to come up on the screen behind me. And it says this: while they, that's Jesus and his disciples, while they were travelling, Jesus entered a village. And a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. She had a sister named Mary who also sat at the Lord's feet and was listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by her many tasks, and she came up and asked, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to serve alone? So tell her to give me a hand." But the Lord answered her, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and upset about many things, but one thing is necessary. Mary has made the right choice, and it will not be taken away from her." It's a story I'm sure many of us are familiar with, and it's a story that, if we had time, we could say much about. But with the time we've got this morning, I just want to draw out one thing this passage teaches us about the posture we can take this year. Really about the two kinds of posture we could take at the beginning of this year. You see, when we meet Martha, we see that she is someone who, her posture is one of activity. She's welcomed Jesus into her home, and so as a kind of host in a Near Eastern ancient context, she's kind of, as is customary for the day, she's looking after him. She's busy doing all the tasks to kind of welcome him and his disciples, preparing food, maybe washing feet, getting things ready for sleeping. I don't know. But she's busy with many, many tasks. Her posture is one of activity for Jesus. But there's also another woman in this story who is her sister and so may well have been like a co-host with Mary, but the posture she takes is very, very different. Instead of activity for Jesus, her posture is one of attentiveness to Jesus. It says she has forsaken her role as host and actually kind of joined the group of disciples, sitting at Jesus' feet and listening to him. One has a posture of activity, the other has a posture of attentiveness. And Martha obviously comes up to Jesus and says, Lord, Mary, she's clearly making the wrong, she's meant to be helping. Can you tell her to come and help? And Jesus responds in a loving way. He says, Martha, Martha. But what he says next, it shocks her. Because he says it's actually Mary that has made, well, he literally says, she has made the right choice. She, in forsaking her many tasks, has actually done the one thing that is necessary. She is giving her attention to me. And as we kind of interpret this story, we have to be careful not to kind of over-interpret it, because this story isn't teaching us that activity in itself is wrong at all. In fact, the rest of the gospel, the rest of the Bible will show us that if you really give your attention to God, if you really listen to him, that will lead to activity. He will call you close to him and then send you out to do things. However, the order of those two things is really crucial. I think what this story does teach us instead is that if activity is like our posture, if that's our natural way of being, if activity becomes our priority, both in what we do first and also what we give most of our time and attention to, then that posture of activity will actually damage us this year. At the level of individuals, as Jesus said to Martha, if our posture is activity, it will lead us to becoming people who are worried and upset about many things. We won't be people of peace and calm and purpose. Instead, we'll be kind of anxious, frantic. And if you kind of take this posture and write it large over us as a whole church, if we as a church become just consumed with activity, whether it's building projects or partnership or raising up leaders or things we can do, if we're consumed with activity, we as a church will become a place of just sort of anxiety. Everyone kind of nervous about the next thing to do and the right way to do it. We'll be a church where people aren't sort of valued for who they are, but where they're valued just for what they can do. We'll be a church where we're not kind of spiritually thriving, but we're just busy and burnt out. Be a church where we're kind of maybe very productive, maybe fruitful on the outside, but inside we're just kind of spiritually shallow. Whitewashed tombs, as Jesus said. If activity is our posture, if that is the main thing we consume ourselves with this year, whether it's in our church or our own lives, it will damage us. The fruit is bad. But by contrast, if we want our years to be marked by peace and joy and love for one another and wise decisions and just a lightness and freedom, where must we go? We must make sure to prioritize giving our attention to the one who is the source of those things. We must copy Mary's example and make it our priority to sit at Jesus' feet. We must do as John the Baptist said to his disciples, he must increase, I must decrease. Or we need to follow Jesus' own command to his disciples in the Gospel of John when he said, by yourself you can do nothing, but if you abide in me, you will bear much fruit. That's the gospel in a nutshell right there. Jesus says to all of us this morning, even if you've never welcomed Jesus into your life, he says, you can do life by yourself, and I'm afraid to say it will be fruitless. Or you can do life with me. I can live in you and you in me, and together we will bear much fruit. That's the invitation of Jesus to all of us today, to live lives that are so attentive to him that it's like we're living in Jesus and enjoying all that he has for us. That is the invitation. That is the posture I believe we need to take as we head into this year. That is the posture Jesus calls for all of his disciples to take. But here's the thing, and this is the thing I want to be really clear on before we finish and respond to this. And it's this, that if this is the life we long for, as I outline this, I'm sure there's none of us thinking, peace, joy, love, wow, sounds terrible. I'm sure all of us think, this is the life, I want that life. I want to kind of be so in tune with Jesus. It's like I'm just always with him. If that's the life we long for, we have to understand it will not just happen by accident. We won't just stumble into that sort of life. Instead, for lack of a better term really, we will have to plan for this to be the reality. We will have to order our lives in such a way to make this the priority. You see, if you and I kind of just went away from here and just went away with the intention, just the intention of being close to Jesus this year, that is a good, that is a good intention for us to have this year. However, if all we have is an intention, then I'm sure that by February, all of our lives will look exactly the same. Why? Because our kind of ingrained posture, our natural posture of kind of being consumed with our plans and projects and things we need to do, this kind of prioritization of the things that we've got to do, that posture is just too ingrained in us. It's our natural posture, and so it will be really hard for us to shake. We might try and really long for a year of closeness to Jesus, but the reality is old habits die hard, and we'll find ourselves actually just slipping back in the way we have always lived. And this is why, just to go back to my physio story if I can, when Jax gave me that kind of new posture, she didn't just say, right, Simon, that's how you need to stand, just go and stand like that now. She's cleverer than that. Instead, Jax gave me actually like a step-by-step process to re-correct myself whenever I lapsed. And so she said, you've got to roll your shoulders back, tuck your chin in, bend your knees, engage your glutes, which, something we don't often say on Sunday morning, but, that's the message this morning. But she gave me this kind of... She gave me this step-by-step plan because she knew as soon as I walked out that studio door, I was going to lapse back into my old habits. It wasn't enough to just have the intention of standing well. I needed a plan to kind of keep re-correcting myself. And what's true in our physical lives is often always exactly the same in our spiritual lives. So you and I, if we want to spend this year in closeness with Jesus, if we want our years to look like Mary's, where we're sitting at his feet, in tune with him, knowing him, enjoying his peace and joy and love, then we must have steps to lead us towards that. We must have habits built into our lives to kind of re-correct our posture. We must have regular things that we're doing in our days and in our weeks to kind of keep us fixed on where we want to be. And so that's why I believe that for us as a church, the most important things we're going to do this year are not the kind of big one-off projects. It's not a building project. It's not kind of a partnership. It's not something else that we can't see right now. No, I believe that the most important things that we're going to do this year, the things that are going to determine our year, are going to be just the regular habits that keep us close to Jesus. The familiar things. Think of things like opening the Word on Sundays, going through Judges and just meeting with God in the Word. Think of praying together. As a church, we pray each morning on Zoom and every month on Sunday evenings. Can I just encourage you again, can you make time for those? I know that, Sunday evening prayer isn't a possibility for all of us. Not all of us can come out in an evening. I'm not expecting 100% attendance at all. But if you are available, why not consider this year just coming and joining us? Coming and depending on Jesus together and bringing him our needs. I think also of the need for us as a church just to continue to make space for God's Spirit to speak to us. Love it that we can do that on Sundays when we worship together like we have just now. And also every month again with our worship nights, like we have tonight. We just make extra space to just be with Jesus. No agenda, nothing necessarily prepared, but just kind of coming to be with him and sense where he leads us. I encourage us again as a church, let's this year make the most of those times. We don't want to just go through the motions to do our song. No, we want to hear from him. That is the one thing that is necessary for us this year. And just to speak to us as individuals, as I finish, can I just be bold enough to say that the most important changes you could make this year is putting in place a habit that will keep you close to Jesus. Or if you already have a habit, the most important thing you can do this year is to keep those habits going. Maybe you just want to take time this morning as we respond in worship just to think about maybe how you could make space for just spending a bit of time in prayer each day this year. Or maybe how you could just get before the Word. If you don't have time to read it before you go off into your day, maybe it's just putting an audio Bible on in your commute or something like that, or making a plan to study it with friends. Getting around it to let it into you. Or maybe it's just finding ways to just create a bit of space in your day, not to read or to pray, but just to kind of be with Jesus, to listen to him. If I had another hour, I would love to just go through different ways that we can do this, but the reality is that's going to be something that looks different for each of us. And so I'd suggest that in your life groups, in our community, let's talk about how we can do that. Maybe that'd be a good discussion for life groups this week. How we're going to build those habits into our lives.